So how much of this stuff do we have domestically? Current domestic production is zero. This is the most fundamental supply deficit of any commodity anywhere on the planet.
Uranium might be the most exciting macro investing story of the day. Uranium, of course, is the key component to producing nuclear energy, and prices are moving higher, along with the stock prices of uranium mining companies. I've asked Amir Adnani, CEO of Uranium Energy Corporation, or UEC, to explain what's going on with uranium and what the future of nuclear energy, particularly small modular reactors, could mean for the uranium sector. Before we start, I should tell you, I personally am a shareholder of UEC, so please do not take this conversation as investment advice, and always do your own due diligence. And now let's check in with Amir Adnani. Amir, always good to see you. Thanks for taking some time. I know things are kind of crazy in the uranium world right now. Long term, I think everybody understands it's super compelling, right? We need base load power. So we need a constant supply of power that's clean and green, and there's nothing better than nuclear for that. But the short-term case for uranium has become really compelling, and that's why I wanted to talk to you today. What's going on in the short term?
What's happening in the short term is a commodity price that is capturing everyone's attention, and it is also just performing in a way that, frankly, you don't see not in any other commodities or in any other asset classes. Uranium prices are on the move. And every day we're seeing an uptick in the uranium price. The last time we saw this was back in 2006, 2007, or even in 2010. But this looks and feels like a supercharged version of what we saw in 2007, where the uranium price went from $40 a pound to $140 a pound within a span of a year. And it was caused by really a supply squeeze, the fact that the supply side has been ignored for over a decade. And then events occurred that caused a further supply disruption. And 06, 07 was the flooding of the Cigar Lake project that was under construction. Today, it's more of a slow cook problem with supply. The slow cook problem started with Russia invading Ukraine, which started to cause difficulties with getting uranium out to the world. Russia, being the largest supplier of nuclear fuel in the world, is now a sanctioned country, and it's harder for Western end users of uranium to get uranium that was previously coming from Russia. There's a bill in the U.S. Senate and the House that's proposing to ban those imports into the U.S., which, by the way, is the U.S.'s dirty little secret, that we're still heavily dependent on Russian imports for nuclear fuel. And then you have other geopolitical events over the summer in the country. In Niger, about 10% of global supply there is now caught up in a coup in that country and kind of a military takeover that's now caused difficulties to get uranium out of that country. And then finally, recent announcements by large producers in the industry who have basically said, look, they're not going to produce as much uranium as they previously had guided they would do. Hence, the market, again, now is realizing we need uranium badly for emission-free electricity. Nuclear power, as you pointed out, globally is gaining incredible acceptance, and growth is taking place in a way we've never seen before. But that uranium shortage is the thing that has everyone's attention right now. And uranium prices are moving so fast that I don't even want to tell you what they are right now, because I'm worried by the time you release this interview, it will be dated. But, we started Labor Day with a uranium price around $55 a pound. This morning, we're at $70 a pound, and it's moving very fast. And I think that's really both exciting for people that are starting to pay closer attention to the sector. This is a sector that has been underfollowed and underowned and underappreciated for, again, over a decade. And now really has got kind of all the engines running and going in the right direction.
How much of the story has to do with processing? Because it's both the actual product, but then there's the processing of the product. My understanding is the processing also was happening in Russia and in and around Russia. Is that right?
Correct. So the enrichment part is 40% controlled by Russia. And Russia also controls almost half of the production through ownership out of the country of Kazakhstan, which is like a single nation OPEC. When it comes to uranium, 40% of production is coming from the country of Kazakhstan. And the Russians control, I mean, legally half of that, unofficially probably all of that, because that's a former Soviet Union state. And so the reality is Russia's got a very strong, firm grip on the supply of uranium and nuclear fuel. But the reality is you don't have enrichment without the feedstock, and the feedstock is the uranium. The whole nuclear fuel cycle starts with uranium. And then, of course, the processing part, as you mentioned, matters, which is the processing and the steps involving conversion and enrichment. The whole that whole supply chain is currently underwhelmed in the West. And there's incredible discussion and bipartisan support from a government point of view, and in Washington, try to address this. We're going to potentially see some action with what is called the Nuclear Security Act that could get passage and could get approved with billions of dollars put aside to try to put up the domestic fuel cycle and the industry. And earlier this year, the U.S. basically created what is called the Strategic Uranium Reserve. And this is meant to basically be modeled after the Strategic Petroleum Reserve. This is the first time since the 1950s, since the Eisenhower administration, that the United States government has actually gone into the market and purchased uranium for its own account. So this is not a every year or every decade type of development. This is profound. We are witnessing basically what amounts to the United States repatriating its nuclear fuel cycle. When the Cold War ended, the U.S. engaged in government initiatives between U.S. and Russia to dismantle Soviet-era warheads, which became a large source of uranium supply for a long time. That program ended, and after the invasion of Ukraine, the reality and the realization is that this stuff has to be basically brought back onshore. It has to be repatriated back to the U.S. because we cannot rely on Russia to continue to supply not only the fuel for the existing reactor fleet, but what about the new generation of reactors that are going to be built? Bill Gates, Sam Altman, the tech entrepreneurs who are now getting behind building these small and advanced modular reactors. And guess what, Ed? Because Silicon Valley and the technology industry is realizing you can't have AI, you can't have advanced computing power without baseload power. How are you going to power all the data centers? Look at the announcement the other day by Microsoft. Microsoft is talking about investing in clusters of small modular reactors, and small modular reactors require greater enrichment levels, up to 19.75%. That's higher than existing reactors. So again, that's why we can depend on Russia. And so there's the developments are quite, again, unprecedented, because also in previous bull market cycles for uranium, we didn't have the advent of small and advanced modular reactors. We didn't have the energy intensity that, let's say, AI and computing sources need, the data centers need that we have today. Our economy is so much more dependent on data centers and on computing power today. How are you going to power that with wind and solar that work 25% of the time? And if you can't have coal and other hydrocarbon sources, because no one wants it, or there's there's a movement to try to reduce our carbon footprint, well, the only solution really is ending up at the doorsteps of existing nuclear reactors and the whole new generation of advanced reactors that are coming online.
So the first time I spoke with you, Amir, was probably 7 or 8 years ago. And even back then, you were saying to anyone that would listen that this is a national security issue. Like, this is a national energy security and then military security issue. The subletting of access to uranium, our nuclear policy, to a potential adversary. So in some ways, this has to be really rewarding for you to finally have everyone catching up to what you've been saying for so long. What is the state today of the uranium industry in the U.S.? Roughly how much do we produce? What do we process? What does it look like? Do we do anything right now?
Well, if we just, before we look at the U.S., if we just look at the global picture for a second, at the global level, consumption of uranium or demand for uranium is about 200 million pounds and expected to be in 2023. And
per year?
For this year, and that number is going up. But yes, so in 2023, that number is expected to be just about 200 million pounds. Supply of uranium from mining is about 145 million pounds. And so right away in 2023, at the global level, we have a 55 million pound deficit. That supply deficit is one reason we're seeing this move behind the uranium price, this upward pressure on the uranium price, where we've seen the price again go from $50 a pound to $70 a pound just over the last 12 months. And now we look at the US. So what's going on at the US level, to your question? Demand for uranium just from the existing fleet. The existing fleet of reactors in the United States power 1 in every 5 homes in America. So 1 in every 5 homes in America requires uranium and consumes 50 million pounds per year. So out of that 200 million pounds of global demand, 50 million of it is in the United States. That makes the US the biggest market for uranium globally today. Even though China is building more reactors than the US or any other country, and in 10 years will surpass the US in terms of being the biggest nuclear generating country, today it's the US. And in the US, for the first time, we're expected now to see growth of a doubling over the next 20 years of nuclear generating capacity because of small modular reactors. The Nuclear Energy Institute is estimating that the rise and the development and construction of SMRs can double US nuclear generating capacity. So now we say, okay, great. 1 in every 5 homes needs uranium. The demand is going to double. So how much of this stuff do we have domestically? Current domestic production is zero. This is the most fundamental supply deficit of any commodity anywhere on the planet that has to do with energy is actually the local US market for nuclear and for powering homes and for electricity, and that deficit. Up until last year, 60% of our imports were still coming from Russia, Kazakhstan, and Uzbekistan. So my company, and you look at the work we've done at Uranium Energy Corp, we're really trying to change that. And we have projects in places like Wyoming and Texas where we expect can become the first new uranium mines to come into production. And of course, we've been waiting for a much better uranium price environment that we finally have to be able to push forward with the kind of commitments you have to make to restarting mines. But the reality is we still have a fundamental supply deficit, both globally and in the US when it comes to uranium. And that, again, doesn't include the needs of advanced and small reactors. That doesn't include the needs of 108 microreactors that are running, that are powering the nuclear navy. Every aircraft carrier and submarine is powered by uranium. And we're not talking about to wage war. We're talking about just a regular ability to roam the international waters. You look at the needs of NASA. Space travel is powered by microreactors that are powered by uranium. And so you look at just about any aspect of the issues and areas around how uranium is used for and what it's used for. We are facing a serious crisis when it comes to the lack of domestic production in the US. Thankfully, I think people are starting to get it. Washington's starting to get it. Investor interest is at a decade high. But we need to see uranium prices back to where they were 2010, 2007. That's when the supply side was incentivized. Today at $70, if we think about where uranium prices are probably heading, we have to do an inflation adjustment on the 2007 and 2010 prices. And if we do that, the 2007 price of $140 and the 2010 price of $75 adjusted for inflation today give us a range of $100 to $200 per pound. And the uranium price is only $70 per pound. And at $70 a pound today, we are not seeing supply side expansion or supply side growth. In fact, what we're seeing is we're seeing big mining companies say they're having difficulty with their uranium mines because uranium mines are no different than copper mines or gold mines. They require labor, they have supply chain issues, they require permits. It's a very tough industry. What that argues for is really higher prices for longer because it is the only way to be able to incentivize the supply side growth that we badly need both domestically and globally. And look, the last thing I'll say about that is in a gas-fired plant, gas makes up, or the fuel cost makes up over 70% of the cost to operate that plant. A nuclear power plant, a pound of uranium makes up less than 5% of the cost to run that reactor. So you have price inelasticity, which is what really underpins the thesis that prices could go higher for longer because it's way more costly to have to shut down a nuclear reactor. And you simply are not going to shut down a nuclear reactor because you don't have uranium because it's less than 5% of your cost. You're going to pay for a pound of uranium if you're an end user because it's the most reliable, baseload, emission-free form of electricity that we have in the world today.
So bottom line, we have to increase supply in this country, and it's going to cost more, period. Like, there's just no way around it.
There's no way around it. But I'm telling you, you as an end user, if your home is one of those 5 homes that's powered by nuclear energy, you won't feel the difference in your electricity bill. Nuclear has an incredible propensity to generate power with very little fuel input. 3 barrels of uranium can generate the same amount of energy as 300,000 barrels of oil. I mean, just think about that for a second. So this is a very, very powerful way of generating a lot of energy for very little fuel input. And again, that's why it is attractive. That's why it is getting the recognition and acceptance that we're seeing today, which is, again, unprecedented, where, again, the global kind of movement towards saying, if we want to achieve the kind of energy objectives that we have, again, reducing carbon footprint, reducing global temperatures, having a reliable grid, having energy security, not becoming a prisoner to a country who, in the case of Russia, what we've learned is you could be taken a hostage if you're too dependent on your energy needs. And Russia certainly has taken Western Europe as hostage. And those are all issues that are on everyone's mind. Energy security, energy reliability, grid reliability, low costs. And if you can do all of that without causing emissions, well, you've checked all the boxes, and it's a true winner.
Amir, you said there's zero production domestically, meaning the U.S. When we include all of North America, because you're in resource-rich Canada, does that change? Is there production currently in Canada?
There is production in Canada, but the reason why it doesn't change is for the following reason. The production in Canada is coming out of 2 mines, and those 2 mines are owned more or less between 2 companies. One is the French government, Orano, so that portion of the production is going to France. And the other portion, a company called Cameco that owns it, has signed long-term contracts with global utilities, including the biggest contract they recently signed was with the Ukrainian utility. So just because the pounds are being produced out of Canada doesn't mean they're exclusively coming into the United States. They're going all over the world because the companies that own the 2 Canadian mines that are operating are non-U.S. and one's French and the other one's global. And yeah, they'll have some sales into the U.S., but nothing like what nothing that would meet the needs of 50 million pounds per year demand profile that we talked about. And one step further, the specific needs of uranium for the U.S. government and also for the small modular reactors has to be U.S. produced uranium, because only U.S. produced uranium has the international legal criteria to be enriched to 19.75%, or even for the needs of the U.S. government, including the nuclear navy, only U.S. origin pounds can be included in that. That's why in the recent establishment of the U.S. Strategic Reserve that the Department of Energy set up, the only eligible companies that could sell uranium to the Department of Energy were U.S.-based companies with past U.S. production. So there is a real need for actually a pound of uranium that has a U.S. address on it. And look, I'm proud of the fact that Ed, I don't care about sort of sitting here and saying, hey, look, I'm right. I told you this 5-6 years ago. I don't care about that. I'm proud of the fact that, A, our shareholders are making money and people are happy with the way the sector and the company is performing and will continue to perform. But I'm also proud of the fact that we've built a business that is a supplier to the Department of Energy of the United States, that we are going to produce and provide uranium to the generation of small reactors and advanced reactors that are going to be built. So we're also, in a way, really see there's a fundamental problem, there's a supply crisis, and we're going to play a part in making sure we can be a solution here, and at the same time deliver outstanding value, hopefully for our stakeholders and shareholders.
How far away would you say small modular reactors really are, Amir? There's some debate over what it's going to take to start seeing more than one being built at a time.
It's certainly today at its most advanced stage ever in history. the demonstration phase of the reactors that we're going to see come online in Wyoming. That's TerraPower's company. That's Bill Gates' business. Dow Chemical has announced their partnership in Texas to develop SMRs to power their petrochemical facilities. Rolls-Royce in the UK is moving forward. In Canada, there's developments with SMR. We are at the most cutting edge of seeing SMR deployment today than any time in history. And what's really exciting about SMR development today is the involvement of major corporations getting behind SMRs. It's not utility companies that are the champions of SMR. It's not a big utility company that owns an existing large reactor that says, let me go build an SMR and connect that power to the grid. No, it's a Microsoft saying, we need SMR to power our own data centers. It's a Dow Chemical saying, we need an SMR for our own industrial operations that require energy in a consistent, low-cost, low-emission manner. That's what gives the SMRs today much stronger business and economic viability, and their outcome of getting to the finish line that I think is so much more almost guaranteed, because this isn't a big utility project. This is not a big government project. These are some of the best and biggest companies you can imagine who have the wherewithal, that have the balance sheets, and really see a business case behind why they need that consistent baseload power. And again, you think about this incredible rise that we've seen this year with AI. You got to connect the dots. You got to say, how could AI be possible and continue to ramp up to do all the things that we envision it could do if it doesn't have baseload power behind it? Power is the bloodline.
If you want to know more about Russia's influence on global energy markets, check out my conversation with geopolitical expert Jacob Shapiro.